I hope everybody's doing great. And even those of you who are watching as a recording, I hope everybody's doing fantastic. Okay, so how many of you are usually impacted by the Mercury retrograde phases? Because not everybody is, right? Like some people just go through these Mercury retrograde phases and just go, well, nothing, it's nothing. Nuko says he's impacted by them. Okay, very good. Anybody else feels the impact usually? It depends. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Very good, Karen, and we'll talk about that. Okay, anybody else has anything to say about how they feel about Mercury retrograde phases? And if you're watching this as a recording at home, feel free to answer the question as well, as I'm posing the questions, because that engages you and that's good, because that gets the brain going. And if those of you who are watching live, feel free to use the chat window or raise your hand or whatever feels most easy and comfortable. All right. So then let me actually say something a little bit about that, because of your answers that I had. Like some people don't feel so impacted, other people do. Other people feel like it depends on when. So a lot of the times with Mercury retrograde phases, if you have a lot of Gemini or Virgo planets in your chart, whether that's your rising sign or your sun sign, or you have a lot of planets in those signs that are not sun sign or rising sign, you will probably notice that you will be more impacted by Mercury retrograde phases. For those of you who have planets in the sign that the Mercury retrograde phase is happening in, so this Mercury retrograde phase will be in Pisces, right? And then it will even go back a little bit into Aquarius as well. So, but mostly Pisces. So if you have a lot of planets in Pisces, especially including personal planets, right? Like your ascendant or your sun sign or your moon sign, then the Mercury retrograde phase will impact you more, because you have personal points in your chart that will get hit, right? Does that make sense, Karen? That's probably why, sometimes, you feel it and sometimes you don't feel it, depending on where it's at in your chart, right? Okay, and then the other thing too is, if somebody doesn't feel the Mercury retrograde phase at all, then it is possible that your Mercury is either natally retrograde, because you were born when there was a Mercury retrograde at that time, or it could also be that by progression your Mercury went retrograde, which you would have to look at a progressed chart online, or you'd have to ask me to do that for you. And then you can see, like, if you progressed Mercury's retrograde, you might also not be as impacted by Mercury retrograde phases. You might actually feel there's a certain sense of alignment that you're feeling. You're feeling actually pretty good during the Mercury retrograde phase, and you actually get more done during the Mercury retrograde phase, or things are just starting to move forward a little bit more during the Mercury retrograde phase. Okay, so it all depends on your own chart. And this is very important, because in astrology we make these blank statements about here's what this means and here's what this is, but I always want you to consider that your own chart is very important to consider when there's anything going on, astrologically speaking, because some people will be definitely more impacted than others. Okay. All right. So how many of you are ready to take action on some of the things you've been planning to move forward on since December 2017? Okay. So that's a long period, right? But so in December 2017, yes, Karen says yes. I'm with you, Karen. Me too. Francesca says yes. Okay. Yes, me too. So December 2017 is when Saturn moved into Capricorn. And this is when we started to focus on certain things that we want to manifest long term and that are important to us, that need a closer look and need a really healthy foundation, something that can truly last long term. And so because of that, we've been kind of like gradually looking at, okay, how can we create this foundation, and what works and what doesn't work? So we have been like taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or even 1 step forward, 2 steps back, right? Some of us. So it depends on where we're at with something in our own, consciousness that we're having with that Capricorn house or that Capricorn energy. But there's definitely this sense, or this almost a little bit like an anxiety of like, I need to make this work, right? It's Capricorn. So it's like, I want to make this work. There's a certain amount of ambition in that as well, right? So, so now that we have Mars moving through Capricorn for the second time within that Saturn cycle, we're kind of, Mars is always sort of like the initiator of some sort, right? So it initiated things to bring a bit more of a juicy energy to it. And so Mars in Capricorn now gives us the opportunity to really take some actions that can really help us move to that next place that we want to get to with all that Capricorn stuff. Does that make sense, guys, what I'm sharing here? Diana is with me as well. She's like, yeah, I'm ready. I need to get moving here. I know what you're thinking. All right. So obviously, Nuko is raising his hand as well. Yes, I know, for you too. So obviously for this agenda, well, hi, Deb. Deb is here too, raising her hand. Wonderful. Okay. So obviously the agenda for this webinar is Mercury retrograde in Pisces, and also it will move shortly into Aquarius as well from February 16 until March 9th. Then Mars' transit through Capricorn from February 16 until March 30th. So good amount of time for us to get things moving, right? Of course, I'll be very happy to answer questions. Today is definitely going to be different than last time when we did the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn, because we didn't have a lot of time for questions. So I apologize that happened that way. But today I'll make sure that I have a little bit more time for that. Okay, and then if I have your chart already, great. Then I'll be able to answer your question probably a little bit easier. If I don't have your chart yet, then please feel free to just tell me, where the planets are or the houses or whatever we're looking at in your chart, so I can answer your question as much and as best as possible. All right, and for those of you who watch as a recording, you always have a chance to send me a question in advance, just so you know. I hope that most of you know that. And if you send in questions in advance, I can answer your question at the end of the webinar, and then that way you get more benefit from the recordings as well. Okay, so that's also an option. All right, so obviously we want to focus the questions on what's happening this month, because that's beneficial to everybody. And I will also try and pull up people's charts so that we can see not just only my chart all the time, but we can also see other people's charts, and we can get a feel for, what are we looking at and how can we answer these questions as best as possible for ourselves, right? And then please make sure that you have your, own birth chart ready so we can take a look at that. Okay. All right. So let's go to the next page here. This is the overview of planetary transits. And so, so this overview of planetary transits, I actually was able to finish the whole year already. So this email that I sent out yesterday has the whole 2020 overview attached to it. So feel free to take a look at that for yourself. Obviously today we're going to addressing mostly stuff that starts in February. So we're going to take a look at, the Mercury. So there's obviously Mercury has station phases before it goes retrograde. It also has a shadow phase, right? A pre-shadow phase before it goes retrograde. And then it comes to a halt on the 16th in almost 13 degrees of Pisces. And then it goes retrograde, right? It goes retrograde until March 9th, where it will go direct again at 28 degrees of Aquarius. And we will talk more about what happens as it goes direct in the next forum. So stay tuned for that. Today we're going to focus more on shadow, station, and retrograde phase in general, okay? And then we'll also talk about Mars in Capricorn, which will be there until March 30th, like I said, starting also on February 16th. So in a way, these two things are happening on the same day. So we're really kind of starting like a phase that's where we're really needing to go more into a feminine place, because let's face it, Pisces and Capricorn are both feminine signs. And for some of you, this is probably not what you want to hear. For some of you are like, no, let's enough with the femininity. Let's just move forward, right? Because feminine signs, obviously, they want to go within. They want to be more connected to the internal, or to the place in us that internally works through stuff, right? So Capricorn is feminine in the way that it works through things, in the way that it says, okay, it's earth, right? So it's realistic, it's got to be right, it's got to work, but I need to feel that internally, right? Like it needs to be connected on a physical level with me, so I feel it in my body, right? Like with all earth signs, you could say you really feel it in your body when something's right or not, right? With the water signs, which are also feminine energies, right? With Pisces, we are definitely feeling it. It's more of an emotional sensation though, right? And it's more about our intuitiveness. So especially with Pisces, it's very much about our intuitiveness and allowing ourselves to tune into our own divinity, right? It's about tuning into the place in us that knows, right? That just knows and senses things. But in order to really get to that place of knowing and sensing things, we have to turn down the volume up here in the mental department, right? Because that's a more masculine energy. We have to turn down that mental stuff, and we have to drop into our heart center, and we have to go within and really listen to the heart, to the sensing, to the feeling that we're experiencing. And it's not just the heart, right? I mean, the heart is definitely where we come from with Pisces, because it's a very compassionate, love-oriented sign. But it's not personal love; it's universal love. So it's love in the larger sense, right? It's love as life is, as source is, as our higher self is, our soul is love, right? So it's more that kind of love, right? So with Pisces, we're really tuning into that love place, that oneness place. And so as we're doing that more, and the retrograde phase really invites us to go there and really give ourselves time to connect to that place within, to connect to that soul place. And we can do that in a lot of different ways, and for some of you, you might already have a practice where you're doing that on a daily basis. But for those of you who don't have that yet, the Mercury retrograde phase is a really fantastic time for us to go within and to just kind of like go, well, what is it that I need so that I can be more in tune with myself? And sometimes when we're resisting that, right, when we're resisting the going within, what can happen is we can get sick, for example, right? Because when you get sick, you especially when you have like a head cold, let's say, right? You have a head cold, what happens? Your mind doesn't function, right? So in order for the mind to shut down, the body produces a head cold so that you can truly get more into the sensing and into the feeling of things. Right? And I know that sounds really kind of like, oh, why does it have to be that, right? But the thing is, sometimes we need to be nudged when we're not doing our own work. When we're not choosing things consciously, sometimes we need a bit of a nudge to go there anyways, right? So the universe and the energies will sometimes, support us by giving us these nudges, right? And so when you get a nudge like that, where you go, oh, why is this happening, right? Just maybe think that maybe this is part of what needs to happen so that you can get to that place that you need to be going, right? So you can truly tune in. And sometimes we don't think about it in that way, right? But everything that happens sort of like gives us an opportunity to connect to something that needs to be connected to. Right? So Karen is saying the head cold makes a lot of sense. I just cleared out a lot of crazy thinking with mine last week. Okay, yeah, so you know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. And of course, it's not nice to have a head cold. I mean, let's face it, nobody enjoys that. But we need to we need to allow ourselves to surrender and to let go when we're in that place, so that we can fully move with whatever the energies need us to do, right? If that happens. I'm not saying it will happen, but I'm saying if that happens. All right, so let me show you a couple of charts before we talk a little bit more about our own charts. I just wanted to show you a little bit in terms of like how these transits are gonna kind of unfold for us. Okay, all right, you guys, so have a fantastic rest of your week. Remember to pay attention to some of the messages that are coming through right now until Mercury goes retrograde, and then take it easy during the Mercury retrograde. Don't do anything hasty. You know, remember, this is also a time for reconnecting to things that have come up in the last 3 months. So there's a reconnecting that can happen with old friends or old clients or siblings or family members, or we can do a reconnecting to something internally, you know, reconnecting to a part of us that maybe we haven't been connected to in a while, you know, depending on what house it's in. You know, like for me, it could be reconnecting to something creative that I've done in the past, you know, that I haven't been moving with in a while. You know, like my book, I could be writing my book again, you know, so, which I haven't been doing in a while. So something that you want to reconnect with, right? Like think of it in that way. Mercury retrograde is reconnecting or reorganizing, reconnecting or reorganizing things. All right, so have a good one. Much love to all of you, and namaste, and I shall connect with all of you whenever the time is right, and maybe the next forecasting forum again. Okay? All right. Bye-bye. Have a good one.